This Spiritual Fix. Now presenting
Question and answer time.
where you can
Ask us any question.
In this bonus episode, we were asked the question if we could please clarify our teachers, because a couple different people said that we name drop teachers in our episodes and they don't know who they are and they would like to be more acquainted with them. So we're going to first discuss S.N. Goenka, who is one of the most important teachers in both of our lives. Would you say that, Chris?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
For a very long time.
So I'm going to give a little backstory. Neither one of us have met S.N. Goenka, and he's now deceased. So he was born in 1924 in Burma, but he is of Indian descent. In 1955, so I guess he was about in his early 20s, he was experiencing deep migraines, terrible migraines, and he was from a wealthy business family, so he was able to afford to travel the world. He went to Sweden, USA. He scoured the world for the best migraine treatments, and in the end, he couldn't find anything that helped except for morphine. And his doctor told him, if you don't find a solution to these migraines, you're going to become a morphine addict. So in 1955, he found Sayagyi U Ba Khin, who in a way is our real teacher because the teachings of S.N. Goenka are coming from Sayagyi U Ba Khin, who was a Burmese meditator. And Sayagyi U Ba Khin is from the Theravada lineage, which is the oldest and most classical school of Buddhism. Their language that they use is Pali, which is a classical Indian language, and it is a sect of Buddhism that comes from Sri Lanka, and it is a sect that says Buddha taught this. We're going to teach the Dhammapada in the exact language of Buddha and as Buddha taught it. And a lot of people say, and there's a lot of legends saying that this was the purest form that remained intact of what Buddha taught. So you have Buddhism, which is worship of Buddha. You have lots of sects of Buddhism where people analyze and dissect it. But this is like, as Buddha taught it, word for word, they dissect the Dhammapada, which is the oral. When Buddha died, all of his followers, arhants, got together and they decided they were going to write down everything that he said so it wouldn't be lost. And they did it in the few days after his death. So this is the Dhammapada text coming from that. Anyways, back to S.N. Goenka. He meets Sayagyi U Ba Khin in 1955 and says, I've got these terrible migraines. I heard that if I meditate, they'll be fixed. Will you help me? Sayagyi U Ba Khin said, well, you will lose your migraines as a natural byproduct of discovering truth and liberation, but I'm not going to teach you how to lose your migraines. I'm going to teach you real truth and liberation. If you want it, you got it. So he studied for 14 years under Sayagyi U Ba Khin, and Sayagyi U Ba Khin went on to die was born in 1899 and died in 1971. So he was in his 50s or 60s when he was teaching Goenka. After 14 years of studying with Sayagyi U Ba Khin, he was ready to now teach himself. So Goenka started to put on these small meditation retreats in his home, which lasted 10 days. Sayagyi U Ba Khin had formulated a 10-day meditation course himself in Burma, Myanmar to be exact. And Goenka decided to start creating these 10-day meditation retreats. They started off as family, they extended through word of mouth, and slowly he brought it back to India, where it grew in popularity. And in 1971, they created the Dhammagiri, which was a big Vipassana meditation center in Igatpuri. And I did a course there. I think I did my third course in Igatpuri. And there are now 341 Vipassana locations across the world. 202 are permanent centers. The other 130 are like pop-up centers, which I've also done where they like rent a camp space out. They are found in 94 countries, and they teach 120,000 people per year this technique of Vipassana coming from Sayagyi U Ba Khin, coming from Buddha. What's interesting is that there was an old legend, which was that someone from an Indian would be reacquainted with this original technique and take it from Burma to India and spread it throughout the land. And Goenka is not a superstitious person. He's a very realist kind of man. He says, it's a legend and it's silly, and yet it somehow kind of fits in that I fulfilled that legend in a way. He has spoken at the World Economic Forum, the World Peace Summit, the United Nations Forum. And another great way you can see Goenka live is some YouTube videos, which I will link in the show notes, but also in a great documentary called Doing Time, Doing Vipassana, where they bring Vipassana to the Tihar jails of India. So that is a little background on Goenka. Essentially, he is a teacher that we've had through Vipassana meditation that we've only witnessed through videos and audios. We've never met him in person, but he's had a huge impact on our lives. So Christina, tell me why Goenka is probably one of your most important teachers.
So
Yeah.
I got into a relationship with a New Zealander right out of college, which is a whole story in and of itself. But I decided to move after dating him or being friends with him and dating him for about 6 months and hearing a lot of his stories about his spiritual practices and like his experiences getting and talking to monks, because there was a Thai monastery near where he lived in New Zealand, and how he basically cured himself, where his cancer went into remission because he was meditating all the time and talking to monks. I just got totally hooked. And one of the stories he told me was that he had gone to California to visit the main monk that was in charge of basically the Thai monastery in New Zealand. It was the head monk. And during that visit, he went to a talk at a local university in San Diego, I believe, because the main monastery is in Escondido, California. And the talk was S.N. Goenka. So because he was with a group of monks, he got to go and visit S.N. Goenka. And the story he told me was that Goenka was the real deal. Like that he had met a lot of spiritual people and a lot of people claiming to be spiritual, but that Goenka had this aura and presence and truth about him that he had rarely met in another human being. And that was enough to convince me that I wanted Goenka to be my teacher. So when I ended up moving to New Zealand, I went, and within the first 2 months, I had signed up for a course, and I went there, and I was supposed to go with my boyfriend, but he had a death in the family, so he couldn't come. So I had to go all by myself. And the New Zealand campus is beautiful. And I was scared to death at first. And I remember the first time I heard Goenka's voice, I started laughing, because the first thing that you ever hear, the first thing you ever hear of Goenka, I feel like we should just link that specific intro, because I actually have his sitting, but he starts chanting. And the chanting is, it's a little jarring
intense
if you don't know to expect it, because he's like, and you're just like,
yeah,
oh,
he
shit.
chants in Pali, and he has a very deep voice. He's also doing a specific thing that takes years of training to do, which is to chant in certain ways with your vocal cords that like only the Tibetan monks can do. Like he's using different bravados that like other people just can't do. And it's just it makes me laugh. Like if you're from the West and you've never heard that before, it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't mean to be funny, but I laughed as well.
No, but then having gone I was by the 5th day I was there. First 3 days, really, really rough. 4 days, really, really rough. By the time I got to the 5th or 6th day, I was literally like, I want to become a nun. I never want to stop meditating, because the things that he was teaching every single night, he would give discourses. The way that the Vipassana is structured is that he gives discourses at the end of the night. And I would literally just like wrap up in my little blanket, having meditated for 10 hours that day, and just like eat up every single word that he was saying, because I felt like I was living a new life. Right. Like I felt like I was just like, I felt free. I felt like I was where I was supposed to be. I felt everything. And I was so grateful to him every single day for providing this, for teaching me this, for making these centers so that I could come here and I could meditate and I could actually feel normal for the first time in my life, feel like I was doing what I was supposed to do for the first time in my life. That I was just so grateful, like, and I will forever be. Like the sound of his voice, they do sittings of strong determination at Vipassana where you sit and you're not supposed to move a muscle for an hour. And it sounds terrible, and it can be terrible, but it's actually really good, because you can get into super deep meditative states, depending or not, but that's fine. His voice comes in at the end, and that's how you know the time is up. And oh my God, the sound of his voice at the end of those meditations was like pure honey bliss, because I was just like, oh my God, I did it. It's just so amazing. And it was such a soothing voice, because he's giving you loving meditation. He's giving you metta at the end of these things, that it's just amazing. So that's me going on about Goenka so much. What about you, Anna?
Well, I did my first course in Nepal. Similarly, an ex-boyfriend led me there. We were in a motorcycle accident. We were motorcycling our way through the Himalayas, and we had an accident, and he broke his hand. So we had to ship his motorcycle back to India because we were now in Nepal. And we were like stuck, and the hospital's like, you can't move, you take your hand out of this cast for X amount of days. And he's like, well, he's like, look, it was like, let's say it was like a Saturday. He was like, it's Saturday. We got 3 weeks till I have my doctor's checkup. What are we going to do in Nepal for 3 weeks? I know. Let's go do a Vipassana course. And I'm like, what's that? He's like, oh, I've done them. They're great. Let's look online and see if there's any coming up. So we looked, and there's one that started tomorrow. So I literally had 24 hours, like between the time I even heard about the retreats to the time that I was signed up and ready to go, like 24 hours had passed. I was like, what is it? He's like, it's 10 days of silence. We're going to be separate because the men and women aren't supposed to interact with each other. And there's really good food. That's pretty much all I knew about it going in. I was like, really good food? 10 days of meditation? This sounds awesome. So we go, we sign up, we get there. The first thing I do is when I hear his voice, I just lose it and I just start cracking up. And I'm supposed to have my eyes closed, and I have my eyes open looking around the room. Is like anyone else like laughing? And yeah, sure enough, some other Westerners from Europe were like, chuckling under their breath because we're like, what the hell is this? What have we got ourselves into? And then like Chris said, by for me, it was like sooner. It was like by the second or third day, I was just like, this is where I need to be. Everything he's saying is putting life into it, making sense of life in a way that I need, that totally makes sense. Totally had total integrity. The center is run only by donations, and it is only propagated through word of mouth. There's just like so much integrity into it. Everyone working there is a volunteer. The food was delicious. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I did it in the hills of Nepal where there were monkeys. And because everyone's in silence, there was monkeys that would like come up to you because they were so used. Everyone's not talking, and there's no cars and no one's speaking. So the monkeys felt very safe in our presence. So it was so funny because we'd finish these meditation things and we'd come outside, and baby monkeys would get stuck in people's skirts, or I'd be washing my laundry in silence and think a woman had sat down next to me washing her laundry. And I look, and it's a freaking huge baboon monkey like right next to me. So that has nothing to do with Vipassana, but my first Vipassana course has a lot of memories of monkeys.
That's amazing.
Totally unrelated.
That's amazing. I had one
Yeah.
with peacocks like that.
The moral of the story is that when we discuss SN Goenka, we are discussing the lineage of Sayagyi U Ba Khin going back to Buddha in its most quote unquote purest form of the Dhammapada, which is a very realistic, hardworking, workist, realist approach to Buddhism. There is no religion in it. There is no worship in it. There is a lot of this is my favorite quote of Goenka. You have to work out your own salvation. Like there's no skirting around it. There's no avoiding it. You have to go right through. You have to go right through your own hells to make sense of the world and to purify your mind, your heart, and your soul. And in doing so, you come out on the other end more grounded and more happy. So that's who we're talking about when we talk about SN Goenka.
Wonderful. So if somebody is interested in becoming a student of SN Goenka, of doing Vipassana, I will say really quickly, and you probably already did this stat, there looks to be about 10 now permanent sites in America, if you're listening in America. There are 3 in California. There's a bunch in the Northeast. There's 1 in Georgia by the coast,
Yep.
1 in Texas, 1 in Illinois, 1 in Minnesota, 1 in Washington. With the pandemic, things are a little bit more difficult. Do you want to talk more about how people can do Vipassana? I think that they're maybe
in a
not
pandemic,
accepting
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think they're not accepting new students because I wanted Luke to go and they can't do that yet. So not yet are new students.
I've
allowed
heard
to
if
go
you're
to
an old
Vipassana.
student, you can do virtual.
But they are doing,
Yeah, and
old students are allowed to do virtual at this point, but they're not yet accepting new people.
And it might change. It might change every day. Maybe some centers are allowing COVID testing. We don't know. But if it is something you want to do, it's awesome. And you might want to get on a wait list a couple months in advance because they do fill up.
Yes, they have become increasingly popular and hard to get spots on. The women's usually fills up faster than the men's sides, but they're definitely worth it if you're able to get in there. So, yeah.
And trust me, it's always going to be good food. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you for talking about Goenka, and we encourage you all to read about him. There's also the book, The Art of Living, which is from the Vipassana Press, which I actually read before I went to a Vipassana course, and I have a copy of it. So that is also, it's not the same as taking a course. It requires the 10 days to get into the practice and to really be able to get deep enough so that you can then go out and practice it on your own and do the DIY. If you are interested and you can't get into a course, The Art of Living is a great book to kind of understand the philosophy behind the actual practice itself. So, yeah.
And we'll link everything in the show notes. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Follow us on Instagram.
This.spiritual.fix. Be sure to like and subscribe on Apple or wherever you get your podcast too. It helps people find us. And remember,
Humility, gratitude, acceptance. Done.
hi, Christina, co-host of This Spiritual Fix. Has listening to our podcast stirred up something for you with the primal wounds? The good news is you have access, and that is the first step to transforming these wounds. We created support packages to help you through this process, and they're available on our website, www.this.spiritual.fix.com. These packages were designed by Anna and I, combining techniques and hacks from our own experience working through our own wounds. Each packet contains a workbook and 2 meditations, one about forgiving those who have wounded you, including yourself, and one about reprogramming old beliefs. You can buy an individual support package, or for those next level processors, all 5 packets: abandonment, injustice, rejection, betrayal, and humiliation. Available on our website and our shop.